Hello and welcome. This video is about upgrading your inner operating system. As we go through this, just notice what resonates with you and what gets you curious. Let me introduce myself first. My name is Robin Urston. I'm a leadership coach based in London. I started working life as an electronics engineer apprentice in August 1963 in Edinburgh in Scotland. I was 1 year older than a transistor. I still am. I then joined IBM UK in 1967 as a computer hardware engineer, switching to software engineering in 1976. Still in IBM, I switched to people, way more complex than computer hardware and software, in 1990 to a leadership advisory role, then into organizational change, coaching and facilitation in 1993. I spent the last 3 or 4 years of my 38 with IBM as a full-time facilitator and coach to execs, leaders, managers, teams, and I loved it. I left in 2005, formed my own company, Gifted and Resourceful People Limited, and I've been working in the field of coaching, facilitation ever since, in corporations, charities, startups, also with school teachers, ministers, a variety of organization and people. In my experience as a coach since 1993, I've learned a fundamental truth. The issues and problems people have are never about work. They're about relationships and communication with others and with themselves. We are social beings. Of course, I still notice these issues within myself, and I'm on my never-ending journey of learning to live more consciously. I'm now focusing on conscious living and the journey towards that. It really helps people address those issues and problems, and as a consequence of that, really helps organizations. Any organization where people interact, which is them all. The aim of this video is to trigger insights, aha moments, that arise as we explore the journey of how we came to be who we are and have created what we have created in the world today. I will share here details of that journey and also a little bit about some of the baggage we pick up on the way. Let me begin with a statement. Humans created the reality we see today in the world of economics, the world of business, the world of politics, etc., etc. Well, actually, no. It wasn't humans as such. It was their fundamental inner programming that created it. That's where we will start, exploring our inner operating system. Have you ever marveled at the capabilities of your smartphone? This small device can make calls, send emails, host video conferences, capture photos and videos, stream movies, etc., etc., etc. The list seems endless. If we could travel back to 1963 when I began my career in electronics and describe these capabilities to someone surrounded by hulking TV sets and Bakelite telephones wired into walls, they'd think we were mad. Yet here we are, living this reality. So how does a phone accomplish all this? At its core, a smartphone is hardware running software via an operating system, iOS or Android, and a multitude of application programs, apps. Developers write programs in human-readable code, if this, then that, but hardware can't read human language. The code is compiled into machine code, ones and zeros, the language the hardware understands. There's now a crucial step, turning those bits, those ones and zeros, into physical actions in the circuitry. Add, divide, store, transmit, display, record, and many, 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 many more. The firmware, the microcode, is the silent translator that connects the software in the form of machine code to the hardware running below the level of user awareness, seamlessly connecting the software instructions to hardware actions, creating the reality of sending a text or taking a photo, etc. Why am I starting here? Because we have something similar. Each of us runs internal microcode, our subconscious programming, the firmware release 1 that takes inputs from the world and from our thoughts and feelings and creates the reality of our lives. It operates below conscious awareness as our autopilot. Researchers estimate that much of what we think, say and do each day is driven by this programming. For example, decision making. Cognitive neuroscience research indicates that about 90 to 95% of daily decisions are made subconsciously, with conscious thought accounting for only 5 to 10%. Habits and behavior. The subconscious automates our actions and habits, guiding behavior based on stored experiences, learned associations, and emotional conditioning. A quote from Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist, known for developing analytical psychology and his studying of the subconscious. Until you make the unconscious conscious, It will direct your life, and you will call it fate. How does that code then become established, and how can we address the issues that arise? How does running this subconscious microcode play out for us in our understanding of reality? Let's look now into more detail into that programming. Looking now then at how we understand reality. When we are born, there's this mess of reality, the what is, out there, which we don't understand. Just observe a newborn, they can't even focus properly. That takes a couple of weeks. At the beginning of life's journey, if you like, we are just pure awareness and are motivated to learn how to understand things. They're learning, we as parents are teaching them. The brain, by the way, learns by repetition. It learns what gets repeated. Acquiring language is a good example. A little story here. My great nephew from San Diego, when he was about 2.5 years old, was here in London, and he loved trains and buses. Buses are all red here in London, and he was learning colours. The only colour he could say, however, was lello for yellow. His parents would ask him, what colour is that bus going past? And he would say lello, and they would say, no, that's red. He understood there were colours, but not what they were specifically called. He was learning, being programmed, if you like, creating and installing his firmware release 1. Now, of course, he can say them all. He's understood how to do that, how to represent the different wavelengths of visible light, distinguish between them, and label them using language. That sophisticated use of language gives us a power many animals on the planet do not have. We teach children. The human brain has the ability to learn language. That enables us to learn what we then come to believe. Do this, don't do that. We teach our children this is good, this is bad, this is right, this is wrong, even though reality may not actually be like that. We get programmed, the brain learning by repetition. There is no good and bad in reality, it is just what is. A major component of building block of that programming is belief. Let's explore that. I came upon this statement many years ago. Everyone knows what a belief is until they're asked to define it. What is a belief? I was fascinated. What is a belief? Many have definitions around what we do with them, but not what they are. I thought about this a lot and came up with this definition. A belief is an internally held representation of a lens through which we perceive reality. We have our lenses, our beliefs, which we are mainly taught. We don't actually know reality. We build a perception of it, a picture of reality, a representation in our brain. We build that representation using the lenses of our beliefs. Note, it is not specifically what our visual lenses or auditory lenses, for example, are sensing that creates our representation. We use the lenses of our beliefs to choose which data information to pay attention to and pass into the representation we are building of reality at this time. And doing this subconsciously. We delete, we distort, we generalize what the actual reality, what is, and build our representation of it. Then we operate as if what we have built is reality. We get taught, programmed what to believe as a baby, a toddler, a child, and those beliefs then become the lenses we use to build our representation of reality. Each of our built representations are similar in many ways, of course, and differ sometimes hugely. My lenses have built something different to others. Take any political debate. For example, here in the UK, there was Brexit, stay in the European Union or leave it, for and against. We can and do build fundamental different perceptions, different representations of what is. Oh, and different perceptions of what happened in the past, what was. It's not reality that shapes us, but the lens through which your brain views the world that shapes your reality. There is that saying in English, seeing is believing. I saw that, so I believe it. Actually, it is not seeing is believing, it is believing is seeing. You will see what your lenses permit and cause you to see. You will see what you believe. Perception is all we know, not reality. Not one single person on the planet knows reality. What we each know is the representation we build of it, using the lenses of our beliefs, built from our experience, that we are taught by culture, by families, by schools, by peer groups, etc., etc. What we are doing from the moment we are born, in fact before we are born, is creating an internally held representation of reality, what is. At a very young age, before we have fully formed beliefs, we, as I said earlier, operate in pure awareness. As we experience life, we begin to learn our beliefs, our lenses. As language is acquired, the lenses, the beliefs become more structured. Now that we're learned on what beliefs are, lenses that shape our reality, let's zoom out one level. If the beliefs are the lenses, then our internal microcode, firmware, is, if you like, the lens factory within us that both creates the lenses and then, using its learned default settings, applies those lenses automatically in every context. Oh, and one of those beliefs we form early on? Yes, the belief I am right. It may be we learn I am right as a young child acquiring language. Big people are teaching us the words eyes, ears, hair, jumper, bottle, chair, ice cream, etc., etc. We check back to see if we got it correct. The big people correct us if we haven't and praise us when we get it right. Perhaps even using language like, yes, that's right, or yes, you are right. Remember, we learn by repetition. That's how the brain learns. What we learn is, I am right. We create our confirmation bias, if you like, early on in life. You may have heard the term or noticed the terrible twos as applied to toddlers. They know when they are right. How does that typically play out for us? Who is right? Well, they each have their point of view and a representation they have built of what is their reality, their truth. What is a point of view? A point of view is just a view from a point. Here in this picture, it all depends on where you're standing. Are they listening to each other? Who is right, Blackberry or Stripeberry, or both? The one who knows the truth. Might emotions be coming into play here? Who is telling the truth? Truth, actually, what is that all about? What is truth? Look at this picture, and what do we see? When you perceive it from where it looks like a square, then it's a square. When you look from another point of view, you create the belief, the lens, that it's a circle. You may swear it's a square because that's what you see. Someone else is saying, no, it's a circle. Each, of course, with the ever-present belief, I am right. We can see from our viewing point that the truth is it's a cylinder. So what is truth? The Merriam-Webster dictionary defines it thus. It's a noun, the real facts about something, the things that are true, the quality or state of being true, a statement or idea that is true or accepted as true, which makes you ask, well, what is true? Merriam-Webster defines true as an adjective, being in accordance with the actual state of affairs, being that which is the case rather than what is manifest or assumed. I thought about the definition of truth for quite some time and came up with truth, a noun, an accurate representation of reality at this time, and it may take the understanding of many different perspectives of what is true to get the best representation of truth, reality, what is. And this quote from Ray Dalio, the author of Principles, says it beautifully. I believe that one of the best ways of getting at truth is reflecting with others who have opposing views and who share your interest in finding the truth rather than being proven right. A question: how do we move from just one point of view to the truth of seeing the cylinder? What would you have to do to get to understand it's a cylinder? Perhaps you'd have to change your viewpoint, point of view. We could then use our logic. If, and it's a big if, you can see there is a circle and a square, then yeah, it's a cylinder. The lesson is we have to take several perspectives to get a representation that is closer to the truth. A quote here from Thich Nhat Hanh, a Buddhist monk who sadly has passed. Usually when we hear or read something new, we just compare it to our own ideas. If it is the same, we accept it and say that is correct. If it is not, we say it is incorrect. In either case, we learn nothing. Why don't we happily move to other viewpoints to get at the truth? Let's examine the reasons that might be so. We live our lives in our created, programmed, learned representation of reality. And notice here, reality, what is now quite a bit covered up by the representation cloud. This is created this created representation is where we get our points of view from. It's where our assumptions arise. It's also where the words should, must, have to, ought to get their power. Whenever you hear those words in a sentence, by the way, there will always be stress for someone. A key thing to understand here is this is where we set our expectations from. The expectations we have are in fact created by us. We each create our expectations from our built representation of reality. The representation cloud that we created by way of our firmware release 1 that we learned, installed, were programmed with, by the way, operates from our subconscious minds. 95% in fact of what we think, believe, say or do is driven from the subconscious mind. Now, if what we see out there and what we expect to see, our expectations do not match, emotion is triggered and we react. I will define emotion in a little more detail later in the presentation. When we react, we do so without thinking. We do it automatically, subconsciously. Just as I said, 95% of what we think, believe, say or do is driven from the subconscious mind by our microcode, our firmware. The level of stress we experience is directly proportional to the attachment we have to our built representation, our expectation being matched or exceeded by reality, what is. What we're actually doing inside our representation cloud is creating an illusion of control, so we can be certain. Emotion can be positive, of course, as well as negative, and we get pleasantly surprised or even shout out, whoop, whoop. If the emotion triggered is negative, we react negatively. It is possible to learn how to pause and choose a response rather than react negatively to get out of that subconscious automatic way of operating. Be responsible, response-able, able to respond rather than react. Be in charge, in fact. This is the major skill to learn in the journey to becoming more aware, emotionally intelligent, and I will return to this later. Before we leave this slide, there is something else that occupies this space. Who might that be? Our ego, our egoic self. Our egoic self is who we think we are, but our thinking does not make it true. This false self is a social and mental construct to get us started on our life's journey. It is a set of agreements between us and our parents, our family, our school chums, our partner, our spouse, our culture and our religion. It is our container. It is largely defined in distinction from others, precisely as our separate and unique self. It is probably necessary to get us started in life, but becomes problematic when we stop there and spend the rest of our lives promoting and protecting it. This quote is from Richard Rohr, a Franciscan monk. Ways this may play out within us and within others is wanting to be right and prove someone else wrong so that we win, not listening when what is being said does not align with our beliefs, caring about what others think of us, being very identified with our thoughts and emotions, feeling very possessive of anything, for example, a possession, a person, a belief system, this is mine, feeling separate from everything and everyone, feeling frustrated and annoyed with what is, thinking they're stupid, excuse me, telling ourselves stories about what is happening, what our life is like, creating what ifs, excuse me, try to reach a future point for fulfillment, ignoring the present moment, resisting what is, trying to be someone. The ego again is learned by us, programmed into us as a module of our firmware, if you like. And that module will receive updates as we go through life. When I recognize, however, this is a program within me, which I am executing automatically, then I'm able to realize I can change how I work with that ego program module, and become much more conscious, aware of thinking that is completely automatic, my ego's thinking. Become more who I truly am, as opposed to who I learned to be, was programmed to be. One more thing about the ego. The fundamental principle driving it, programmed deeply into it, as I said earlier, learned by us, is I am right. What we need to recognize is we all have this driving principle. You and everyone else believe they're right. A metaphor is fish don't know they're in water. If we tried to explain it to them, they'd say, water? What's water? They're so surrounded by it that it's impossible for them to see it. They can't see it until they jump out of it. And that quote from Derek Sivers. We need to learn to jump out and begin to observe our ego. A way to do that is to imagine our ego as a physical being that we can learn to become aware of, observe from outside, like being spectators at a stand-up comedy show. The comedian is our ego, and we are observing it, watching it, being aware of it. In doing so, we realize that we're in front of an often dramatic, neurotic person who regularly does not really know what he wants, complains about everything superbly, makes mountains out of molehills, and turns everything into a problem. You will notice some words that he or she uses a lot: should, must, have to, ought to, that I talked of on a previous slide. When we become aware of this by observing the comedian, we take away her or his power, his automatic power over us. The ego isn't all bad, of course, and it can and does help us in many situations. If we consciously pay it heed, give it attention, then thank it for its point of view, its view from a point, and now consciously choose how we want to work with what he or she is saying. However, as Eckhart Tolle says, as long as the ego runs your life, most of your thoughts, emotions, and actions arise from desire and fear. And Albert Einstein actually says it beautifully. More the knowledge, less of the ego. Less of the knowledge, more the ego. This comes into play when we argue, for example. A little more now on the ego. When faced with issues, problems, the ego says, it's not my fault. The fault lies out there. This story from Wayne Dyer. Imagine the following scene. You're in your house, you've got your car keys in your hand, the lights go out because of a power failure, you can't see a thing. You stumble around in your living room and you drop your keys. You look around for a moment and realize you're never going to find them in the pitch dark. But you look outside and you notice that the street lights are still on. So you say to yourself, I'm going to stay around here I'm not going to stay around here in the dark and grope around looking for my keys when there's a light on outside. I'm going to go out there under the street light and I'm going to look for my keys. So you're outside groping around and looking for your keys until your neighbour comes along and he asks, what happened, mate? I dropped my keys. I'll help you look for them. Now the two of you are looking for your car keys. After a few minutes, your neighbour says, excuse me, but where exactly did you drop your keys? Well, I dropped them in the house. You dropped your keys in the house and you're looking for them out here. This doesn't make any sense. Well, it doesn't make any sense to grope around in the dark when there's light here. Isn't that exactly what we do when we have a difficult problem or a struggle that is located inside our mind and we are looking for the solution outside of ourselves, expecting somebody else to change or something outside of you to get better in order for you to make your life work? Is something you have to take a hard look at. You are the one with the difficulties. Perhaps we need to look at and look in the right place, inside. And this quote from Wayne Dyer now. When we change the way we look at things, the things we look at change. The ego isn't wrong. It's just unconscious. When you observe the ego in yourself, you're beginning to go beyond it. Don't take the ego too seriously. When you detect egoic behavior in yourself, smile. At times you may even laugh. How could humanity have been taken in by this for so long? Above all, know that the ego isn't personal. It isn't who you are. If you consider the ego to be your personal problem, that's just more ego. The ego is, of course, another major element of the source code for our subconsciously driven autopilot. Now let's examine another major element at play within us. Emotion. I've mentioned emotion in previous slides. Emotion, what is that? Let me examine that. It plays a major role in our lives as humans. The definition we will use in this presentation is emotion. Energy in motion, triggered by sensing. Where is that motion? In our bodies, energy being transformed. Where is that transformation of energy being interpreted? in our conscious awareness. We create a representation of our inner reality. We interpret and assign meaning to that representation based on past experience of that energy transforming. That interpretation is what we label as feelings. Emotion then is energy within our body, which we interpret, assign meaning, and then label as feelings. A little more detail on emotions. There are 6 basic emotions: happiness, sadness, fear, disgust, anger, and surprise. Remember, emotion is energy in motion, energy being transformed, triggered by sensing, experienced by us in our consciousness and body. Externally source triggering is via these systems, our visual, auditory, kinesthetic, olfactory, and gustatory. For example, in sport, music, dance, theatre, comedy, sex, food, travel, other people, etc., etc., etc. Internally source triggering is via thoughts. A thought can trigger just as effectively as external sensing, and we will return to this. We experience emotion by identifying with the thoughts generated by that trigger of emotion, internally or externally. Our reality representation cloud, as we do that, we assign meaning to the emotion, thoughts, and dependent on past experiences. That meaning then becomes something that we label using language as a feeling. Then begins to complicate things just a little. Our beautiful brain now goes to town on interpreting the basic emotions as feelings. I'm sure you're all familiar with and use emojis: embarrassed, frightened, upset, disappointed, stunned, confused, etc., etc. And feelings, well, frustrated, ashamed, proud, awful, avoidance, aversion, oh my goodness, right, critical. There's just many, many, many of them. Let's go through now what happens within us and our internal operating system as reality, what is, does or doesn't do what it does or doesn't do, starting with inputs. The world, reality, what is, our body, thoughts, emotions, feelings, and the outputs, the consequences, and the reinforcement or even sometimes modification of beliefs. Between the inputs and the outputs we have beliefs, the lenses, those learned default settings that build our perception of what we notice, that creates for us our interpretation. The interpretation, those lenses we apply, create the story for us, which triggers emotion that now arises from that story and the feelings associated with that story, leading to the representation we create, the lived representation, our fused experience. From this we move to action, what we now think, say, do, avoid. What drives that which happens between us, inputs and outputs, is the internal microcode. It controls those beliefs, perception, interpretation, emotion, representation we create, and the autopilot is engaged and it is piloting our life, not us. We've explored here what the firmware microcode does. Now let's explore how and why that internal microcode gets created. During our early years, our brains are uniquely primed for learning. This period, often referred to as the critical period in developmental psychology, is characterized by heightened neuroplasticity and rapid synaptic formation. Children pre-birth to around 7 years old spend much of their time in a theta brainwave state, 4 to 8 Hz, which is associated with heightened suggestibility, creativity, and the formation of deep-seated beliefs. We are creating release 1 of our microcode firmware, which is formed during that time through several key mechanisms. Repetition. Repeated experiences and messages become deeply ingrained beliefs. Our brains learn by repetition. What gets repeated gets learned. It doesn't really care what it learns, if you like, in childhood. It just learns what gets repeated. If you think as adults how we learn something new, for example, driving, playing a musical instrument, we learn by practicing, repeating. Emotional intensity. Experiences with strong emotional content, positive or negative, are more likely to form lasting beliefs. Observational learning. Children adopt beliefs by observing and imitating others, particularly caregivers. Reward and punishment. Beliefs associated with rewarded behaviors and punishment we receive tend to be reinforced. Survival adaptations. Many beliefs form as coping mechanisms to navigate the child's environment. There are potential benefits to us as children, informing the beliefs that we form. At the core of the beliefs, scripts and patterns we learn lies a set of intrinsic desires, what every human being wants and needs. The intrinsic desires: to be part of something larger than themselves, to be paid attention to be listened to be respected, to be loved, to matter. These intrinsic desires and needs map directly to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and they're with us all our lives, not just as children. We all have these intrinsic desires and needs. Let's look now at some of the early beliefs we learn and why we learn them. This table shows the life-limiting beliefs that can be and are formed in release 1 of our microcode, tied to intrinsic human needs we've just been talking about, and highlighting the benefits to us as children. I'll talk to a few of them. In my experience as a leadership coach, these are very common. I'm not good enough. The intrinsic human need to be part of something larger, to be paid attention to. The potential benefit of believing I'm not good enough is striving to be better in order to be part of something larger, seeking attention and validation from others. I must be perfect, to be respected, to matter. Potential benefit is I must be perfect, is gaining respect and admiration from others, feeling like they matter when they achieve perfection. I must please everyone, to be loved, to be part of something larger. The potential benefit is feeling loved and accepted by others, being part of a harmonious group. I'm not lovable, to be loved, to be paid attention to be listened to. Potential benefit of believing I'm not lovable is protecting oneself from the pain of not being loved, avoiding the risk of being ignored or not listened to. I'm not important, to be part of something larger, to be listened to be respected. The potential benefit of believing I'm not important is avoiding the pressure of being relied upon, protecting oneself from the pain of not being listened to or respected. I am responsible for others' happiness, also commonly known as people-pleasing. To be loved, to be part of something larger. The potential benefit of believing I am responsible for others' happiness is feeling loved and needed by others, being part of something larger by contributing to others' well-being. From a child's perspective, then, these beliefs serve as coping mechanisms to fulfill their intrinsic desires, needs, or protect themselves from the pain of unmet needs at the time. For example, striving for perfection, as I said, may help a child feel respected and like they matter, while avoiding failure may protect them from feeling unimportant or unloved. However, it's crucial to recognize that these beliefs, while serving a purpose in childhood, can become detrimental, life-limiting in adulthood. As adults, it's essential to find healthy ways to meet these fundamental needs and to challenge and reframe life-limiting beliefs that no longer serve us as adults. These beliefs that we learn get programmed with, whether limiting or empowering, and they can be empowering. For example, I am loved no matter what. I can do hard things. I am capable. I can learn and improve with practice, the growth mindset, etc. Become the cornerstone in creating our personal reality. They influence how we interpret events, how we respond to challenges, and even what opportunities we perceive as available to us. For instance, a person who believes I'm not good enough might consistently undervalue their abilities and shy away from opportunities, while someone who believes I am capable might approach challenges with confidence and resilience. It's important to note that this microcode isn't inherently negative. Positive, empowering beliefs can also be programmed during this time. The key is recognizing that these early formed beliefs have a profound and lasting impact on our lives. The formation of release 1 of our microcode is also influenced by broader factors such as culture, socioeconomic status, and historical context. These factors contribute to the complex tapestry of beliefs that form our individual worldview, how we perceive and work with reality, what is. So how does this programming play out for us? The subconscious mind, which houses our childhood programming, our firmware, microcode, is estimated to control, as I've said, 90 to 95% of our thoughts and actions. This means that the majority of our daily life is guided by those deeply rooted beliefs and patterns, often without our conscious input or awareness. The subconscious operation of childhood programming operates through several mechanisms, and this first one is key: selective attention. Our beliefs act as filters, causing us to pay attention to information that confirms our existing beliefs while overlooking contradictory evidence. Interpretation. We interpret events and experiences through the lenses of our beliefs, often distorting reality to fit our preconceived notions. Emotional responses. Our beliefs trigger automatic emotional responses to situations, which in turn influence our behaviors. Decision making. Our subconscious beliefs guide our decisions, often leading us to make choices that reinforce our existing worldview. Behavior patterns. Repetitive behaviors and habits are often driven by subconscious programming, leading to automatic reactions in familiar situations, leading to an addiction, if you like, to our thought patterns and behaviors. Why our thought patterns and behaviors feel sticky? It's like we're addicted to them. The term addiction in this context refers to the compulsive nature of our ingrained thought patterns and behaviors. Much like a substance addiction, we can become dependent on these familiar ways of thinking and acting, even when they no longer serve us or actively harm our well-being. This manifests in several ways. Comfort in familiarity. Even negative thought patterns can feel comfortable because they're familiar, leading us to resist change. Neurochemical reinforcement. Certain thought patterns and behaviors trigger the release of neurochemicals like dopamine, creating a reward cycle that reinforces the pattern. Identity attachment. We often become attached to our patterns as part of our identity, making it challenging to let them go. Automatic repetition. Like any addiction, these patterns become automatic, repeating themselves without conscious intent. Withdrawal symptoms. Attempting to change our ingrained patterns can lead to discomfort and anxiety, similar to withdrawal symptoms in substance addiction. This addiction to thought patterns and behaviors, of course, remains with us as adults, all part of the microcode. As we transition from childhood to adulthood, the issue is release one of the microcode, formed in our early years, doesn't simply disappear. Instead, it has become deeply ingrained in our subconscious mind, operating as the autopilot that guides our perceptions, our decisions and behaviors without our conscious awareness. I'm sure you've all been in meetings, interactions where it's like we're back in the school playground. Let's now look at thoughts arising from release one of the microcode as adults, our adulthood autopilot. How our learned life-limiting beliefs generate thoughts, negative and positive experiences. Here are some life-limiting beliefs again, and note this is not a complete definitive list. You may well have formed different ones as well as some of these. The thought patterns generated when the experience is negative: self-doubt, I knew I wasn't good enough, this proves I'm a failure; perfectionism, I made a mistake, I'm a failure, I'll never be perfect; people pleasing, I've let others down, I must try harder to please everyone; feeling powerless, I've no control over my life, I'm helpless; fear of failure, I failed again, I'm a failure, I must avoid risks to prevent failure; feeling unimportant, my needs don't matter, I'm insignificant, unimportant, I'm responsible for others' happiness, I've failed to make others happy, their unhappiness is my fault. And interestingly, what those patterns are when the experience is positive. For self-doubt, this success was just luck. I'm still not good enough. I don't deserve this positive outcome. Perfectionism, I could have done better. This is not perfect. I need to work harder to avoid any flaws or mistake. People-pleasing, I should prioritize other needs before my own. I can't enjoy this success because someone else might feel bad. Fear of failure, I got lucky this time. I'll probably fail the next time. I should stick to safe and easy tasks to avoid potential failure, etc. Now moving to summarize. Release one. Summarizing then release 1 of our microcode. The autopilot nature of these beliefs, etc., means that they continue to influence our lives until we become aware of them and actively work to change them. Recognizing those patterns is the first step towards breaking free from the autopilot mode and moving towards more conscious, intentional living. In the next section, we'll explore how we can awaken to these subconscious patterns and begin the journey towards greater self-awareness, personal growth, and live more consciously. How we can stop the autopilot and build and install release 2 of our microcode, the observer. So now we understand a bit about our inner operating system, the firmware release 1, how we built it, how it serves us as children, and maybe not so much when we are adults, people pleasing, perfectionism, etc. Let's look at how we perform the upgrade, installing release 2, the observer. So now we understand. Okay, the observer, upgrading your inner operating system. As mentioned earlier, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate, as Carl Jung says. As we said, we are all running on release 1, the factory defaults. Early learned patterns installed in childhood to keep us safe. In adult life, they become our rigid autopilot. They run silently shaping our reactions, relationships, and decisions. But what if? What if you could install an upgrade? Not to erase your programming, but to consciously lead it by installing the update Release 2. Release 2, the observer. An impartial, non-judgmental witness that notices thoughts, beliefs, emotions, feelings, the ego, and the pain body and intuition, etc., without automatically acting on them. It is the diagnostic tool for your inner world. What does this enable us to do? It enables us to create space. What space? The space between stimulus and response. Why might that be useful? This quote from Viktor Frankl says it. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. The greater the space, the greater our power to consciously choose our response. The key thing to learn is creating that space, and we will come back to this later. The core shift we make in using the release 2, the observer, is its data, not identity. We treat all inner activity, that jumble of thoughts, emotions, feelings, noise, etc., as information that you can filter as data and label, not as who you are. Label it as data, a thought, a belief, etc., an emotion and a feeling. And we'll cover this in the following slides. The key takeaway is when you label the noise as data, you separate your identity from it. You are not that thought, that belief, etc. So how do we label the objects of that inner activity? The objects of our observation. They are thoughts and beliefs, the inner narrator and its lenses, emotions and feelings, the body signals and the stories we attach to those signals, ego protection, patterns of control, approval and safety, and the pain body, as defined by Eckhart Tolle, the author of Power of Now. The pain body is the accumulated emotional pain from the past that lives in you as a negative energy field and becomes active when something in the present triggers old patterns of hurt. It then sustains itself by provoking conflict, drama, and inner negativity, because these states generate the emotional energy it feeds on, and hence creates new drama and suffering in the present. And finally, intuition, quiet clarity that survives the pause, an inner knowing. The fundamental process the observer uses to look at these objects is the 4C pillars bridge, to move from autopilot, programmed by release 1, to conscious choice. I'll cover this in a little more detail in the next 2 or 3 slides. The first pillar is catch the default. The cue is say to yourself, observer online. What it means. The first step is to simply notice when a default pattern starts to run. Common telltales include a tight chest, heat in the face, a rush of self-doubt, or an urgent impulse to fix, prove something, or appease someone. The mini move is name the trigger in 5 words or fewer, the tone in the email, for example. Pillar 2 is classify as data, not identity. The cue is, it's data, it's not me, not who I am. I'm the one who's noticing this data. What it means, this step involves labeling the inner experience to unhook from it. The primary types of data you will observe, as we just talked through, are a thought, a belief lens, an emotion signal, feeling story, ego protection, pain body energy, an intuition nudge. The mini move is apply one short label. It's a thought, I'm in trouble. The emotion is fear. Create the space, the pause. The cue is make the space, then choose. What it means, this is the crucial pause. The simplest and most powerful tool for this is taking one slow in breath for a count of 4 with a longer out breath with a count of 7. This simple action helps your prefrontal cortex, the wise owl, come online, overriding the fast reactive amygdala, the guard dog. The mini move, if you feel a sense of urgency, take 2 long out breaths instead of 1. And the 4th pillar is choose. Choose consciously. Make that conscious choice. What matters most right now. What it means, from the newly created space, the final step is to choose one small action that aligns with your values, not your old programming. The mini move is act in a small reversible way. For example, ask one more clarifying question. State for you one honest line. Wait 10 minutes before sending an email, etc. Finally, the cap beam for this bridge. A bridge cap beam is a horizontal reinforced concrete member atop the pillars or columns that support the bridge deck or girders and transfers their loads into the substructure. Our cap beam is data, not identity. Now that you have the 4C method, let's explore in detail the different types of inner data you will be classifying. A field guide to your inner data. Becoming skilled at classifying your inner data makes the observer technique much more effective. This table serves as a quick reference to help you distinguish between the key signals you will observe. The object, the tool, what to do, what to notice, and the cue phrase. Thoughts and beliefs, repetitive stories, fixed lenses. This is a thought, belief lens. It's data, not me. Emotions, heat, tightness, energy shifts. Breathe into the sensation, name it, energy in motion. Feelings, interpretations layered on emotion. Notice the story versus the sensation. This is the feeling story. Ego, protection, control, approval, safety. This feels right to me. Certainty, treat certainty as data and ask what else could be true. Protection code is online. Pain body, heavy, urgent, old hurt surfacing. Remember I defined it earlier, that negative energy field that becomes active when something in the present triggers our old patterns of hurt. Feel it directly, don't put a story in it. Lengthen the out breath, delay big decisions. Energy here, feel it, don't narrate it. Intuition, quiet, simple clarity that persists. Take one small reversible step, review later. Quiet clarity counts. The space, this is the tool. What to notice, that urge to react instantly, then breathe in for 4 and 1 slow out breath for 7 to enable conscious choice. Make space, then choose. Another technique, when triggered or overwhelmed, breath reset. The 4 P's, pause, process what's going on, plan a way forward, proceed with that chosen way. It's like a micro meditation. The cue phrase, observer online. The brain timing tool. Notice that pull to act fast. Breathe in for 4, out for 7. Delay the action. Let the prefrontal cortex catch up. Breathe out for clarity. Now that you can identify the key types of data your system produces, it's time to build the observer muscle through simple, repeatable daily exercise. Follow the 4 C's process. I will recap. Catch the default. Notice when a default pattern starts to run. Remember the telltales: a tight chest, heat in the face, a rush of self-doubt, or an urgent impulse to fix something, prove or appease someone. Silently say observer online. Classify as data, not as me, not identity. Name what is present. There is a thought within me, I'm not ready. A lens, perfectionism, an emotion, fear signal. Then go to step 3. Step 3. Create the space with the pause. The issue here is your brain has a timing challenge. The guard dog amygdala reacts fast, in milliseconds. Survival driven, to keep us safe. The problem is it's using our old release 1 level microcode firmware to do that. And the wise owl, the prefrontal cortex, needs several seconds to engage, to enable conscious choice. It is slow and intentional. The pause is the manual override. Looking now at the pause. So what arises is a thought, belief, a lens, remember, emotion, feeling, story, ego, protection, pain body, intuition. Remember, you cannot stop them from arising. Then the guard dog, the amygdala, with its fast reaction appears. Now we take a single conscious breath. In through the nose for a count of 4, then out through the mouth for a count of 7. That is the neural bridge. That one slow out breath calms the guard dog and creates the space and brings the wise owl online. It buys your prefrontal cortex, the wise owl, the time it needs to take charge and lead. It is slow and intentional. Using the wise owl, you can now treat everything inside you as data, not your identity, not who you are. Thoughts, feelings, and ego patterns, etc., are passing events and signals. You are now the stable awareness that notices them. The slow out breath is your superpower. This simple physical action is the fastest way to interrupt the brain's autopilot reaction and create the space for a conscious response. Practicing in low stakes moments. Build the observer muscle during everyday low stress situations, so it becomes a reliable tool when you face high stake challenges. This is a practice of repetition, not perfection. Every time you pause and notice, you are successfully installing the upgrade. There's no failing, only practicing. The goal is to create a pause, not to stop your thoughts, feelings, ego, etc. We can't. Breathing in for 4, out for 7 brings the wise owl online. Only then can you choose not to fuse with them. With the prefrontal cortex, the wise owl in control, it can now execute step 4, and from the created space, choose a conscious response. From that space you've created, the wise owl, the prefrontal cortex, now intentionally asks, what matters most right now? In what is one small way that with my values I can take, aligned with my values I can take? This is the shift from being run by programming to leading your life intentionally with awareness. Practice installs the upgrade. Repetition. We move from being driven in autopilot by release 1 to having release 2, the observer, the foundation, active, which then enables us to upgrade to release 3 and beyond, the ongoing encoding, recoding of healthier defaults. Repetition is the install process. Every small values aligned choice by the wise owl prefrontal cortex strengthens our new pathways. Every pause is an upgrade. Each moment of noticing installs more freedom. What appears for us are thoughts, beliefs, the inner narrator and its lenses, emotions and feelings, body signals and stories we attach to them, the ego protection, pain body, patterns of control, approval, and stored emotional energy that get triggered. Our intuition, gut feel, that quiet clarity that survives the pause. Our amygdala triggers, our guard dog initiates our autopilot. This is where we intervene to take back control. By taking one slow breath in for a count of 4, out for a count of 7, that enables the wise owl, the prefrontal cortex, to take over and switch off the autopilot, the guard dog. We can now observe and name what is present, those thoughts, beliefs, emotions, feelings, ego, pain body, and intuition as data, not who we are. And then consciously choose one tiny values aligned step. This is your invitation. Breathe in for 4, out for 7. Name what's present as data. Consciously choose one tiny values aligned step. Moving now to summarize. To summarize then, the observer, our guide to conscious choice. We need an observer because of the problem with the autopilot and the guard dog reacting faster than the wise owl, our prefrontal cortex. Remember Carl Jung's quote, "Till you make the unconscious conscious, it will run your life and you will call it fate." The observer is a shift to awareness. It is an impartial witness to your inner life, enabling us to separate, disidentify from our thoughts, beliefs, emotions, feelings, ego, pain body, intuition, impulses, by treating that inner activity as data, not identity, who we are. To use the observer, we have a 4-step practice. Catch the default autopilot pattern, often a physical sensation within us. Classify what has appeared as data, create a space, take one conscious breath in for a count of 4, breathe out for a count of 7. Now that we have the wise owl, the prefrontal cortex in control, from that space we can consciously select one values aligned action to take next, respond rather than react. This from James Clear, author of Atomic Habits. There are 2 simple rules. You get better at what you practice. Everything is practice. Look around and you may be surprised by what people are practicing each day. If you consider each moment a repetition, what are most people training for all day long? Many people are practicing getting mad on social media. Others are practicing the fine art of noticing how they have been wronged. Still more have mastered the art and craft of making plans but never following them through. Of course, it doesn't have to be that way. What are you practicing? To close, then, a poem I wrote back in 2022. We are born as pure awareness within. We're not aware the journey is to return to that. We are driven to survive and have instincts to help us. We are curious. We are learning. We are learning how to move, to stand, to walk, to eat, to drink, to run, to talk, to think. We're operating in a hypnotic state. Our brainwaves are theta. We're being taught, programmed with knowledge, beliefs and skills. We're experiencing emotions. We are learning from our families and parents patterns and scripts. We are becoming who they, consciously or not, are programming us to be. We are driven by the need to survive. We are fearful of abandonment the most. We are learning patterns and scripts that become our life's drivers. We are learning and becoming more certain. We are learning how to socialize with others. We are learning what our culture is, subliminally teaching us. We are evolving, our brainwaves changing. We are becoming more conscious. We are becoming more and more certain of our ways of thinking. We're living now as the illusory persona of the ego we were taught to be. We're not aware yet of who we really are. We are running our lives 95% in automatic as who we've learned to be. We are now becoming vaguely aware this is not who we really are. We're beginning to wake up and know we need to change. We're now searching for that change. We're searching out there, where we were programmed to search. We're thinking the pathway to our growth lies with others and out there. We are unaware that the pathway lies within us. We are unaware the pathway of our growth is to that pure awareness we were born with, within us, the oneness. We are unaware until we fully wake up. Remember the observer, our key to unlock it, inner awareness. Thank you for watching. I do hope some things have resonated with you
and you will begin to explore your inner operating system and look to upgrade from Release 1, the autopilot, to the Observer Release 2 and beyond. Thank you.